Another one. Got a little bit of time, so I got a good one for you guys on this. This is going to be about vegan wife. One of those stupid religious type ones. This one affects me because it's kind of funny when you can see the difference. So, for example, for you guys that don't know, my wife is a vegan. Well, it's like a fussy eater. She just doesn't like the taste of meat. It's not any religious thing. It's not any PETA thing. So I'm like, I eat meat all the time. Doesn't really matter. A couple adjustments, like if she makes a vegetarian meal, I just need something I can have meat as a side dish and we're good to go. But a lot of guys, they end up, converting religions for their women. They convert all kinds of things for their women. I know, whatever. Sue me. Sue me. Enjoy the free content. Yeah, so it'll be good. I'm gonna be a little bit faster. Yeah, back for another. What the hey? But it's gonna be a good one. Because, I don't know, the vegetarian, like guys sacrificing for their women is like a common thing. And it's no different than if a guy changed his job for a girl, changed his religion for a girl, changed his diet for a girl. Basically, just letting her decide the direction of your life and letting her irrationality, her zealous irrationality, drive the ship. And if you're letting emotions drive, is it any wonder that people are miserable? So, we'll see. Hopefully this one applies. Anyways, you guys know the deal. I'm going to start recording, and I'll talk to you in a minute. Welcome, fellas. One more Mids Watch on the go. This one's going to be fun. It's a guy with a vegetarian, controlling, irrational wife and his attempt to claw back his own mental point of origin. It's going to be a couple concepts I want to keep in mind when we're going through this. The first one's going to be that of frame. The second one's going to be that of control. And the third one is going to be that of assertiveness. I'm just going to get straight into it so we can get straight to the point. So the op, since left, again, standard among field reports. The guy has a one-off problem. He comes in. He demands everybody to drop what they're doing and ask him what he can do to fix things, and then just leaves. My guess is he's probably having a bunch of fights with his wife. Maybe it's all he needed was that one little thing to fix it, but more than likely, he most likely regressed. But that's, you can't force a guy to do things. But he says here, my wife is a lifelong vegetarian. Grew up that way. Her mom's a PETA person. My wife posts animal abuse links on her Facebook wall, of course. Excuse me. Of course, Beta Me switched and quit eating meat about 10 years ago. And about 2 years ago, I got tired of it and started buying meat from humanely raised animals and eating lots of fish. Tonight, we went to dinner for a friend's birthday, a nice steakhouse, all paid for by the wealthy uncle. Everybody's eating steak. My wife kept telling everybody that she could tell it was killing me and that I clearly wanted some meat, but since it's not humane or from our special Portlandia approved spa or farm, I couldn't eat it. So I pussied out and started eating butthurt salmon. Anyways, I'm tired of it. I'm going to keep ordering the beef from my farm because it's awesome, but I also want to end this fake constraint and eat whatever I want. I already do eat what I want when I'm not with her. So what's the best approach? Just do it and not give a fuck? I'm this close to bait-upping a talk about it just to tell her what I'm going to do, but that seems wrong. And at the same time, if I just start eating meat, she'll be totally jarred by it, and then she'll want to talk about it, and it's such a deeply held thing for her that agree and amplify or amuse mastery will just escalate things. He sent an update of him buying steak from his fancy little vegan thing there, but okay, so a couple thoughts on this one early on. Like he's attempting to grab frame back, and for the last 2 years he's been struggling. You're going to see, like, first off, he's afraid of his wife's emotions. If you notice, the only reason he hasn't just started living his life the way he wants to is because he's worried that she's going to address him about it. She's going to get mad, and he already knows. And it's a weird thing. So when during your formative years, you've built a couple mental models up, and usually from the case of weaker fathers, absent fathers, from divorce or whatever, guys are kind of raised to defer to women because when we're young and helpless, we defer to the authority figures, and women are very lazy parents, and so they'll like, you're not going to be a good son and I'll just leave you if you do this stuff, and that messes with the kid's head. And so he essentially has that instinctive mental model built up over a lifetime to the point now where he's afraid of getting his wife angry over eating steak. The fact that she did that whole, oh, well, he doesn't eat meat in front of the people, she was essentially flexing on that social group, saying how she's got this guy henpecked. So there's zero respect in this situation, and the guy kind of knows that. And then the fact that he sat there just eating salmon, calling it bitch salmon, just lets you know. Like, he knows he's whipped. And he knows he's learned helplessness right here. If you guys don't know learned helplessness, I talked about it the last episode. It's the situation that even when your prison is open, a lot of guys just refuse to escape. The interesting thing about this one, though, is that he's building all these barriers in the way for his success. Like, for example, well, I agreed to it 10 years ago, so I can't be a liar. And it's like very basic. When I say no, I feel guilty. Manuel Smith talks about the assertive Bill of Rights, and one of them is you're allowed to change your mind. Remember, it's fair across the board, fair play. If you're the kind of guy who's like, marriage vows are supposed to be sacred, but your wife is like, yeah, but I still want to have sex with the pool boy, what kind of enforcement mechanism do they have? And a law that's not enforced is no law at all. And again, same thing here. I do find it funny, though, his flex was to buy his humanely treated beef and to flex with that, saying, look at what I'm hiding from my wife. It's like, you're flexing, but not in the direction you think you are. Anyways, so from a field report perspective, there's a couple of the older guys like CJ Aubrey talking about read when I say no, I feel guilty. Basic assertiveness stuff. And he's really harping on using broken record, which the problem with broken record in this situation is the issue isn't the talk. The issue is fear and lack of frame on his side, and the assertiveness will help, but broken record's not going to be the panacea to his situation. Anyways, another guy in here, and I wish I could remember who this was. Just like, he's guys like, just eat the meat already. Jesus, this made my head spin. Good job eating meat. Don't explain, just do. You need neither her permission nor her consent. Yeah, I think that one was me. Actually, yeah, that is me. Man, my old account. I love seeing some of my old stuff. I guess that's why I felt obliged to comment on this one, being in this exact situation, but eating all the meat I want. And he's like, yeah, I understand that's a stronger move, but the op here, he's going to start having his conversation as soon as he starts eating. And then he'll have to choose between letting his steak go cold and talking with his mouth full, which is kind of a good joke. And my response is like, yeah, then he deserves to be a fuck up. If he starts justifying his life to a vegan, no sidebar can fix him. CJ's like, yeah, he's going to walk in front with the steak in his hand to start eating in front of his wife. She's going to start kicking off. Like, what's his next move? Does he just keep repeating, we'll talk when I finish my steak? Like, it's dominant, given where he's at, but it might be hard to pull off. Is there another approach you'd think that would avoid this interaction? But regardless of whether the guy has his steak before or after facing down the screeching wife, the conversation should involve very little talking. In fact, probably should be able to do it while comfortably eating a steak. Anything more than 5 sentences at a go, and you're probably just deering, which is defend, excuse, explain, rationalize. Codependent behaviors. If you learn nothing else from this video, learn that those aren't good things. So then Jack and him kind of get into the thing, and the guy's like, look, I disagree, and I don't want my comment to sound poorly thought out or flippant. The way I see it, I've seen this vegan BS type girl he's talking about. Being with a vegan myself who hates vegans, calls it being a fussy eater, they're emotional, they're irrational. She probably believes in a whole bunch of other crap too, and this is just another goalpost for the op to jump through in order to earn her love. He's flat out stated himself that she's welcome to leave if him eating meat is a deal breaker, so I see no reason to have any of this facade. Just go look behind the curtain. If he has the frame to stick with what should be an easy thing for him, eat what you want. For him, the freedom to decide the direction of his own life is more important than that of his woman doing it. And it's the same realization that this guy had. The same one many people have had over a lot of this stuff. In fact, for most of the red-pilled stuff, guys realize that your choice of the direction you want to take your life is more important than appeasing the feelings of somebody else. Anyway, so Jack's got his thoughts on this too, and it's, for the most part, it's good. He's like, you know what, I suspect this may end up being one of those discussions where everybody kind of agrees, but it's just let me play devil's advocate for a bit. Let's say the guy came to the Married Red Pill and suppose he wants to have a poly relationship to his wife. He used to be poly, and he only agreed to monogamy because his wife said it was a deal breaker otherwise. I'm sure an immediate argument is that he'd actually have a much harder time navigating the poly world as a legally married man than his wife, but let's forget the practical stuff. Op literally says, I used to be poly, and I want to be poly again. If she gets into poly too, I'm cool with it. Would you just say, well, just start dating other women. If she doesn't like it, that's her problem. You don't need her permission or consent. Just shut the fuck up. And that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. It's like, how would that play over? But, I mean, you're probably going to make the argument that it's hardly equivalent, that I'm presenting a straw man, or at least disingenuous reduction to absurdity. Monogamy is hardly the same as the freedom to eat meat. What she shoves in his mouth should hardly be under his wife's jurisdiction to complain about anyway. Whether he screws other women would be in her jurisdiction. You'd think that it's likely she'll start whining and then pipe down after a sufficient shut the hell up response over the meat. You don't think it's likely that that would happen over polygamy, and would probably advise something like, look, if you want to pull something like that off, you need to have a high SMV. Anyways, Jack's making just a big case on how his like metaphor is really bad. Let's just skip to the part where he actually gets to the point. And he's like, yeah, so if he's going to bitch out as soon as she gets a little cranky over it, then I agree. Save the fight for a day when you're playing to win. And that's Jack's point. His wife's frame is so strong when it comes to vegetarianism that her reaction to this conversation will be the equivalent of telling your wife, hey babe, heads up, I'm just going to go have sex with random women from now on. And Jack agrees, Op's frame is so shitty, there's a 99% chance he'll bitch out. Apparently he's got a 3-month-old son, which I didn't know in this one, so I guess it's in one of the deleted comments from later. So even shutting up on the outside, his inside will be a toxic mess of anxiety. And then he says he wakes up the next day, sees a note from his wife saying she's taken the kid to their mom's because she doesn't even know who he is anymore and doesn't think she can be with somebody who won't even communicate. Or maybe she doesn't do that and just takes the kid out for an errand, but, you know, dad wakes up into an empty house and starts freaking out about his wife possibly doing that, so he's an anxious wreck. She comes home from the errand and says, so you're finally going to talk to me about your decision to endorse the farm, factory, animal, slavery, abuse industry? And, you know. Anyways, this is a lot of words, I gotta admit, and it's weird because it's not like diet is such a simple thing, but it's turned in like you can tell it's underlyingly a situation about autonomy and control and religious zealotry, and it's just interesting how a steak is how this all comes out. So try to look past the automatic situation here and look at it as a metaphor. So, and then Jack's got the point, like, there's no way in hell this guy is going to actually stick to his guns, is going to shut the fuck up, is going to hold frame and hold his boundary. So maybe it might be best in this case to do a tactical retreat, build up frame in the smaller areas in life where she's also like irrational, and then eventually come back to the stronger ones when you have the frame to be able to stand by your convictions. So he's going to give an opposite example here. Let's say the op agreed 10 years ago that he wouldn't hang out with his friends without texting his wife every 15 minutes. Even if this was a strongly held belief on the order of a religion to her, that's definitely part of her frame. And I would say just try to, you know, deal with it immediately. If you can't leave the house for a few hours without constantly checking in with her, how many other issues in life is she going to have control for lack of the ability to stand up to this one? So even if her frame was incredibly strong, even if the wedding vows were literally included with the phrase like I'll never leave the house without contacting you every 15 minutes, it doesn't matter, because it's impossible to construct your own frame if you're still going to operate within the wife's frame in those conditions. So for Jack, he's like, you know what, this is one of those live like a man, let the chips fall where they may situation. If the wife persists, the demands, just shut up or take a hard line stance that like, nope, I don't think there's any issue with this and I'm just going to keep doing it. It's entirely appropriate. Now the wife will freak out, start escalating divorce, well, so be it. So what's the alternative to buckling? Living a life where you let your wife use your cell phone like an electronic leash, where you don't get to eat meat for the rest of your life? And then Jack says, like, my point here, and I know it got a bit convoluted, is that a hamburger isn't always a hamburger. Sometimes it's polygamy, and sometimes it's letting your wife use your cell phone like an electronic leash. To simply advise, just shut up in any and all cases, maybe a little short-sighted in my opinion. So with that said, he yields the floor to me. So I see his point that he's getting at here, even though it was like a very hard one to get through and understand. It's not about the hamburger. And this situation about the vegan wanting to control her man's diet because of her like religious convictions, which in this case is for food, which it sounds ridiculous, but every guy kind of has this own situation. Girls are anxiety-ridden messes. They just are. Neuroticism is like 80% women. They're just designed to be timid, shaking, chihuahua-like creatures. It's whatever. Now here's the thing. What human beings do in general, and women specifically in this example, is they build rituals, false sense of securities. I call it security theater. In this case, it's veganism. In another case, it's always wanting to have them under your leash. Like, call me every time you leave the house. I want to talk to you every 15 minutes. Other times, it could just be, I don't want you hanging around those friends. Sometimes it could be a girl will dress a guy in really crappy clothes so no other girl will find him attractive. Sometimes girls are feeders. They literally fatten up their guy. They ug him up so nobody else would want him. Now, it stays off the anxiety that they have and their neuroticism, but ultimately it kind of like ruins the relationship as well. Like, if you fatten your man up so no girl wants him, turns out you don't find him sexually attractive anymore either. So what do you do with that? And as any guy will tell you, you just can't let the girl run your life. You can't let her need and fear of lack of comfort, her fear of anxiety, dictate the terms of the relationship. You just can't. And so, yeah, it's maybe you have a frame, maybe you don't have a frame, maybe you buckle, maybe you're afraid of your wife's emotions. Who knows? But, and what I liked about this one is because it doesn't provide answers. So guys have to come to this on their own. If you don't have the ability to stand up for things, symbolic things like the veganism, for example, then you got to find a way to get yourself to that place. And this is where the assertiveness training and when I say no, I feel guilty comes from. Pick smaller topics. Pick topics you know you can fight. Pick topics you know, like, she's not going to leave you over, and you just insert something stupid there. Like, maybe she's like, I always need to have the body pillow positioned right here on the bed. Well, you make it the way you like it. You don't like that one. She'll have a big freak out over it, and you don't care, and you've never heard in the history of ever somebody divorcing over the position of a body pillow. So that's a boundary you're able to enforce. And it's one you're able to practice. And then as you do that boundary, you start picking bigger ones. Maybe it's the dishes need to be washed, and you said you were going to do them, but you're doing them on your schedule. Just because she nags you doesn't mean you're doing it immediately. Maybe you wanted to wait 10 minutes, whatever. That's another boundary you can enforce. Then as you get used to establishing these boundaries, your frame starts to develop, and you start to get a serious set of personal values, and you understand the consequences aren't there. Like, she'll yell and she'll nag, she'll freak out, but she's not going to leave over it. And even if she does, like, how bad do you want it, right? And then eventually you get to a point where you realize, okay, I really don't have to put up with this shit. And that's when you start saying, yeah, hand me a steak. Because now you're at that point that if she leaves you over a steak, it's like, really? You're not going to leave over a steak. Just sit down. But you got to get to that point. And it's just like this fearless, I don't even want to say fearless because it's not a guy pushing through the fear. It's not some big courageous bravery thing. It's just a goofy vegan, man. Like, who cares? But that's the point. You throw away this scoreboard. You stop thinking that she's your arch nemesis. She's a control freak and you're terrified of her emotions, but you powered through it anyway. It's not even that. It's just, I'm eating meat. Why are you yelling? And once you get to that level of like laissez-faire, that level of disconcern, that level of confidence in your ability to maintain a relationship, even though you're doing things that they may not like, or to replace her if it becomes a deal breaker, then so be it. It just sucks for this guy because apparently he's got a 3-month-old son at the time, and he's a nervous wreck to begin with, and probably that lack of protein and amino acids in his diet has made him a neurotic mess. But, you know, we'll get there when we get there. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a bit different, but I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it'd be good for you. Anyways, enjoy, guys. Cheers. Okay, where'd I leave off? Yeah, that one was a bit of a convoluted mess. I forgot that. By the way, the other guy arguing with Jack, that was me. Because he keeps making Canadian references there, little snipes, and I forgot. This is before we had our little beef, which is kind of funny. Let's see here. So what do you want? When do we want it? We don't know. Yeah. But I mean, it's a side part to it. I always talk about a strong internal set of values will help you establish boundaries and have a good frame. But in his case, it's not so much that. It's just he just doesn't have the capability. Like for him, it's just, I just want to eat meat. It's a conviction. He wants to have it. It's a thing. He wants it. He just doesn't know how to do it. So sometimes taking a tactical retreat for that one and working on the places that you have the strength. It's like, same as me. No gym, 15 months in Ontario because of COVID. So what do? I go and start strong lifts. I literally start at the bar. I'm like, I'll start from scratch, whatever. Took you a while, but you eventually get back there and then you're good. Woo woo. Another episode, good one. Love the new mic. I'm glad you do. I'm a huge fan of it myself. Just feed her eggs and she'll have a better mood. Who can dislike meat? A few of my friends, actually. One of my friends is a clearance diver. He ended up getting sick in Mexico from some foreign port trip. And I guess there's a parasite down there. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about that. Once you have it in your gut bacteria, you actually get physically sick when you eat meat. It's the weirdest thing. And he loves the taste. He loves the smell. But if he eats it, he just gets physically ill. And there's a lot of people that have that. Some people, it's like religious stuff. I mean, but mostly veganism is just like a need to control and virtue signal. But whatever. I love meat and will never be vegetarian or vegan. But I did cut down to 1 or 2 times per week. But see, that's just it. Arnold, that's the point, is that you're making a decision about the direction of your life, and other people don't. They may get a say in it, but it's ultimately your choice and your decision. And that's the kind of the place the guy needs to get. The hamburger had nothing to do with it. It's about him learning to take control of his life. Ecologically, it would not be the worst thing if we reduced meat's consumption globally by a bit. Maybe. That's not my fucking problem, though. Like I said, I know it sounds harsh, but not giving a shit if the world burns around you. Like I said, let it burn. There is a global trend right now of like Asia starting to eat meat, India starting to eat meat. Whatever you do or don't do isn't going to make a difference. And I know you're like, well, if we all do it together, it's like, no. I don't think you understand. The world's going to happen regardless of your individual actions in like a small country. The developing nation has a trend. It's just not going anywhere. Yeah, I used to blame the ex about her needing a therapist after the breakup. I came to the space and realized that it was a problem in our relationship was a frame issue. Yeah, it all is. Well, Rambo in this one too, John. He's like, don't go Rambo. Yeah, so if you guys don't know, Rambo is just applying these tools without any thought or consideration to the purpose of them. I make the reference of hypothetical imperatives. If you want X, do Y. And most guys don't. They approach them as categorical imperatives. If you want alpha, do this. Alpha is good. Be the alpha. It's like, it's not the way to look at it. In this case, what is your X? What's your value? In his case, it's eating meat publicly, not having to hide it from his wife. So what's the strategy? What's the why? And in this case, boundary enforcement is the way to do it. And then not fearing emotions is the way to do it. But if you don't know the goal, you're never going to know which strategy applies and which one doesn't. Because it's like I said, he's probably right. Amuse mastery and agree and amplify aren't going to be the tools for that. Fogging might be the tool. A nuclear option might be the tool. But if you don't know, you don't know. This one sounds like what happens in couples therapy where somebody's become religious. I have no doubt. Yeah, and one of the assertive rights from When I Sin, I Feel Guilty, you don't have to explain yourself. You can be your own judge. Absolutely. Like, I don't have them all memorized, but I know the 2 that are most important are that one and the one where you're allowed to change your mind. So yeah, I agreed to be a vegan 10 years ago. I don't want to be a vegan anymore. It's fine. Same way as like you're allowed to say, I don't like you anymore as my wife. I'm going to leave you. It's the same as saying anything. You're allowed to change your mind. And it's nobody's business but yours. And they have to be either okay with it or not okay with it. That's their choice. But you already knew potential consequences before you even made your stand. And you know what? Guys will eventually learn how far you can push things towards your own self-interest before there's any pushback. It turns out you always had the keys to your own frame and your own autonomy all along. You just chose not to use them in the same way that those dogs with the learned helplessness never tried jumping out of the cage when it started shocking them. They could have left at any time. Oh dear. And that's what Myron was doing when hitting on that women through text. He was going Rambo and it backfired. Well, from what I've seen, and I haven't followed it too closely, I just remember it was something like, you want a spot on my show, you got to sleep with me first. That's just, like I said, there's sexual strategy and then there's sexual strategy. Sexual strategy is a way to be attractive, to attract more girls, to get more sex. Illegal stuff, not so much. And Me Too, it's not illegal. But the problem is the way the environment is set up right now, like there's a huge consequence with like coercive sex. And it's probably not the strongest thing from a red pill perspective to do that or encourage that because it can backfire. If I was so inclined, I'd probably do a red pill coffee explaining that, but I'd kind of, it's been a few days and I'm kind of over the clown show other than, you know, the occasional jab. So I'm good with that. But he's going to quote Rollo. To be fair, Swerve, out of all the red-pilled people, out of all the MGTOWs, out of all the guys in this space who talk about masculinity and shit, I probably quote Rollo the least. he is maybe, and I'm not saying this to denigrate him at all, I'm just saying that's how big a space it is that out of all the things, all the mental models, all the stuff you've heard about, Rollo's maybe 10% of it. I'll quote Athol K. I'll quote Ian Ironwood. I'll quote the Blue Pill Professor. I'll quote Wine More Please, Rule Zero Dad, Whisper, Human Sock Puppet, Red Pilled School, Dalrock. Like, you'd be surprised how many guys are in this space and doing all kinds of crazy work on all kinds of avenues. Rollo's just one man in a sea of many. It just so happens he was like the first one. And he's kind of good as like a top view, 10,000 foot view, which is great. But yeah, I always find it weird when a lot of guys treat it like you have to attack Rollo or you have to kiss his ass to be in this space. And I'm like, it's neither, man. Just stand on the shoulders of giants. He did a whole bunch of work and it's done a lot of good. Stand on that, build something greater. And that's what everybody's been doing. Athol K, Ian Ironwood, Solos, Rollo, Roosh, Royce. Stand up here. Make your mark on the world. Nothing wrong with that. All right. Anyways, if we're just going to get into like to Myron stuff, I'm probably going to end the stream there. Anyways, enjoy yourself, guys. I got to run some errands anyway. I'll catch you later. Cheers.